got my own
LA street angel, called to heal these streets, wipe away the dust with your sacred wings.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Street Angel Show. I forgot my wings. How dare. I've never done that before. I'm Mandolyn Reese. I'm known as the Street Angel. I've been running around the whole country in public places and airports and wherever I go, promoting positive messages of universal humanitarian nature. And I have posters I wear front and back. This is my main message, just general kindness, and some of my other ones: be caring, be kind, help others. Let's see, people over profits. I like that one. Serve others with care and love. And today is going to be related to braveness. Have courage, be brave, share your truths, be out there and weird like me. So that is me, and I just got a higher calling to do it from God in 2012 on the city of Los Angeles, and ran around there in Hollywood for 4.5 years, and then went up to Portland, Oregon for a year, and then back to Texas. So just been all over the place, really. I travel a lot with it. And I wanted to go over just a few updates. I love having my talk show as an outlet for my mission because I love to co-create with cool guests that I identify in my reality as being cool people who are also on similar missions to unite people, activate people, spread enlightenment, higher consciousness, spirituality, guidance and advice for better living, all kinds of cool stuff. So you got to watch the show, and whoever is watching, thank you. So a couple of random updates on me. I usually talk about my products really quick. So I have my book that's just come out on Amazon, An Angel's Guide to Manifesting Your Dreams and Romantic Relationships. It's an adult playbook for planning your life. It's got really cool pages in there that you can plot things you want to do with your life, and bucket list items, things you want to attract or have or accomplish, see, travel, do, whatever. It helps you do that stuff so that you can basically have a roadmap for your life that you can work from. I have an Epic Healing CD, which is a trauma release meditation that cleans out your chakra system. And I have, the CD and these angel cards are on my website for sale, thestreetangel.com. This is my romantic relationship angel guidance cards. It helps you navigate dating and relationships. So kind of helps you with your inner voice to figure out, what is your inner voice saying about your partnership, and just kind of deeply guide you in that department. And a couple of updates. Over the weekend, I got to go to Austin, Texas for an intentional autonomous relating workshop. This guy Vision has a really epic, like a mansion type house on the top of a cliff overlooking Lake Travis. It's really beautiful. And he teaches this high level stuff about conscious relating, like in partnerships, but it can also help, your friendships as well as your business partnerships. And then I got to go to this cool, it's called a gospel brunch, but it wasn't really about gospel. It was really just community and people dancing and singing and about unity and stuff. It was really beautiful. So that was my weekend. I got to run around all over Austin wearing my wings. So now I want to get into today's show. I'm particularly excited about this one because I don't know what kind of stuff will be revealed, but we're going to be shredding some veils of illusion and talking about some deeper truths in society. And I have guests, their brothers, Derek and Daniel. I happened to meet Derek at a conference in Mount Shasta. I'll be showing a picture of that. And they have their own talk show or podcast that is called Shredding the Veil. So it helps raise consciousness and stuff. So I'm going to bring them into the show now. Here's Derek and Daniel with Shredding the Veil Show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
How are you this evening?
Doing great. Yeah. Good to be here.
Cool.
Yeah, good to see
you.
you.
I forgot to mention I have a new Heart microphone and from Kauai Lighting. So it's kind of like Hawaii, but with a K. So if anyone's interested, but sometimes they're on back order. So just be aware. So these two cool dudes are grandsons of the late Daniel Morris Salter. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
So part of a disclosure project, which we will be learning more about. And this is a very highly classified project. And the grandfather also worked in an ultra secret National Reconnaissance Office with a Cosmo clearance, which is 38 levels above top secret, which is fascinating. I'm like, wow, I've never heard of Cosmo clearance. Can y'all elaborate a little?
Yeah, not a lot of people have. It's when you go in the above top secret clearances, when you're talking about security clearances within the government, there's multiple levels, and there's actually we have a chart of them. There's actually like 38 of them or so. The Cosmos clearance is up there, but they're all you get into those on a need to know basis. So a lot of even the lower classifications aren't aware of the higher ones as they go up in rank or the information that's shared at those levels. So it's a lot of information that the government doesn't necessarily want everyone to know.
I mean, I hope you don't get in trouble for sharing.
Yep. No, that's been part of like the disclosure movement as they've allowed certain things to come out, and that was part of the disclosure project. A lot of testimonies from former operatives and military people who had encounters mostly with we're talking about the UFO topic, and so there's a movement there for that, and the Cosmos clearance is, as our grandfather described it, deal with UFO crashes, investigations of those, extraterrestrials, and particleization of energy. So really interesting stuff that really, people don't like to acknowledge a lot. Yeah.
What do you mean about particles, something of energy?
Yeah. I can explain a little bit. That's that really is. I guess it had to really do with when you look at the UFO technology and how it works. You have to look at the physics, basically the fundamental physics of reality, and the way that if you look at quantum physics, you have both waves and particles. So atoms or electrons can be looked at as a particle or even light or particle or in a wave state. So matter is either in a particle or wave state depending on the observer and how you look at it. In quantum physics, that's what happens. So energy is constantly being exchanged between solid state and say a waveform and frequency. And what Nikola Tesla said, of course, was all things in the universe is all has to do with energy, vibration, frequency. So when you talk about it, kind of goes into almost like levels of consciousness about even the love energy that you can create, and that's something that I'm sure we'll talk about in this episode. But that is a technology. These concepts of basically of physics and how even spaceships come and go into our atmosphere, into our third dimensional existence that we live in, because there's many more dimensions and densities
Layers.
that exist.
Right.
Yeah, there's layers upon layers. You know.
I mean, and there's even other dimensions like ghost and spirit kind of stuff, and apart from the whole concept of alien stuff.
Definitely.
So I've heard a cool message where it's like aliens are really just stuff we don't understand, like we label it that, but it's like there are other beings of life and creation that we just don't maybe fully understand, and there's all different kinds of them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, our conscious brains can't relate to like the energy levels and the different dimensions and how that actually physically works, and they can be in all places at once, or materialize, dematerialize, stuff like that. It's like it's so foreign to us. It's a hard concept to grasp, and there's so much to it that we probably will never understand.
Mm.
And it goes through all of our history. The UFO phenomenon and that kind of thing, it really has gone through hundreds of years, centuries of these sightings, and even in the Renaissance period with these paintings of UFOs in them, and all the like Michael, the famous painters in Italy that were painting the Leonardo, like the Mona Lisa, but things like that in that time period. We're also seeing images of UFOs. So this was a phenomenon throughout human history, and we've probably always been visited. And not to clump everything together, but maybe when we talk of angels in the past, they could just be higher density beings, highly evolved beings that we almost emanate with just this light, this higher frequency that we might mistaken as, who knows? And it's probably very related to spirituality. I mean, that's the other thing I want to point out. When you start talking about UFOs and aliens, a lot of people just assume, well, how does God fit into the equation? But he easily fits into that equation because God still created everything. There's still a divine creator and a consciousness that created all that we can never imagine that exists in our world and many worlds beyond. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
So how much do y'all know? Just as grandsons of somebody who has had this clearance, like how much do you know, would you say? Or where do you want to tell us?
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, yeah, I mean, for us, we learned a lot from our grandfather growing up. He, so I guess a little background on his situation. He was in the Air Force from like 1950 or so till 1969, and then he became an operative in the organization, the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, which was a classified organization until the 90s. It wasn't even known as a real government organization. And they are supposed to be in charge of communications, satellite technologies, and things like that. But a big part of a faction of what they do is dealing with extraterrestrials and UFOs. And so when you get into these various clearances and you have to take these secrecy oaths that the government, from what I understand, it's like a 50-year oath that you won't, talk about anything that you saw or did while you were in those programs. And so he started speaking out about it in the 90s and started speaking at different lectures about his information and sharing it with the world. He felt comfortable going forward then. And so as we were growing up, as teenagers, we would hear him talk about stuff like UFOs and aliens and time travel and all these different concepts that, you see in movies, but you never know are real. But he was very specific and adamant in saying that, this is a truth and don't let anyone tell you any different from what I tell you. And so, but he was the only person telling us this. So it's like, it was hard for us to really, as kids, understanding this and knowing what to believe, at that age. And then as we got older, in the 2000s with, everything that's been on the internet now, we've found, doing our own research, a lot of corroborating information that validate all the things that, he was saying, and really brings some solidity to what as teenagers growing up. And it was that really fueled us to, take it seriously and want to share what we had learned from him and make sure that people know the truth, because our purpose is really to seek the truth and to follow his legacy of exposing the truth, so people are awake and they can understand what the world really is and what's really going on behind the scenes, what our history really is.
Did he have any fear of getting in trouble for talking about it?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. You want to talk about that, Derek?
Yeah. I think he definitely had a fear of that. Because we of course, I think he talked here and there and said, aliens, UFOs, and all this kind of stuff exist in some extent, but he didn't say any personal experiences he had until we were about, like my brother said, in the 90s, when I was about only 10 years old. So I was very young, but I remember my mom said, gather around, your grandfather has something to tell you. And he talks about the actual UFO sighting he saw in the early 50s, very early 50s, just after Roswell. And this happened because he worked radar tower. And so he would explain all this whole sighting that he saw, how he kept the pictures. And for his crew, he said, keep the pictures. They're going to come confiscate everything officially, but make sure you keep a copy to share with your grandchildren and family in the future. So
why do they hide it? Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why do they hide it so hard?
It's okay. I can answer that in one way. There's a lot of ways to answer that, but mainly because of the technology behind the UFOs. I mean, it's basically free energy technology. We all should be living in a free energy world right now where we don't have to pay for oil and gas. We shouldn't be using oil and gas, fossil fuels, nuclear. It's not necessary. And that's something that's probably the most critical thing to say, and the one thing that you're not supposed to talk about. You can talk about aliens all you want, but as soon as you bring in that into the equation, they start questioning. You'll start getting a little bit more visibility, and they'll really, the powers that be will do what they can to prevent you from speaking and make you look like a fool, ridicule you. It's one thing to say UFOs, but there's a lot of threats and a lot of stuff that goes along with this. And so our grandfather was ultimately scared at the end, and he was actually supposed to speak at the Disclosure Project with the 20 some odd witnesses. He's the only one that froze up, and right before he's about to speak, he just froze up. He couldn't do it. I think he kind of shrilled, and he had this like, I can't, something happened, and they had to take him off. And Dan Willis actually talked about that with us.
I would say these are, they're pretty dangerous, corrupt individuals. And if I may share a story, I met a guy in Portland, Oregon, and he had told me that he had worked on this free energy project in a friend's garage for 2 years. And when he went and did everything the right way. He went and got his own patent. And when he did that, it basically ruined his life. Like it got the attention of General Electric, and they came in and slapped a lawsuit on him. It almost sounds like there's an alien on our line. I'm hearing the weirdest sound I've ever heard on my show. Where they're listening right now.
It could be.
So anyway, so like it's throwing me off. It almost sounds like that movie with Mel Gibson in it, like which one we're talking about?
Science.
Yeah, it sounds like that. So this guy, he filed his patent, and they slapped him with lawsuits, and then they froze all of his money accounts that he had, stole all of his money, said he owed all these taxes for this garage he used, and just totally ruined his life because he was trying to offer free energy. So
many people have been threatened and killed, and just coincidence of suicide, some kind of weird suicide that doesn't make any sense, but it's happened so many times. Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, I pray for divine protection over our show right now.
Yes.
It's important. Yeah.
Never know who's watching.
Yeah.
So I forgot to share the picture of us really quick. It is a good picture. Yay, that's where I met Derek.
Yeah, that was a great event.
It was a higher consciousness spiritual festival in Mount Shasta, California. And then I forgot to show this, which is your talk show, Shred the Veil. It's a good picture. Wanted to make sure I threw that in there. Others, I like that picture. Okay, just wanted to run through those before I forgot. Sometimes I'm like out of order. But that's who it would be,
Yeah, no, that was a great conference that we met at. And I like to bring up the fact that there's synchronicities that happen all the time. And I'm sure you have that because many people you've met through your journey. And your journey is so incredible that, and it's so amazing that it's a calling, like you said. And I think me and my brother feel the same way. And that's once you go on that path and you know what your purpose is and you feel like you have a purpose, you really set your intention and your mind and your heart to follow that path, and people will show up in your life. Things will magically start to happen and appear in your life. And I think that people need to start listening to themselves a lot more and to find their calling, because I think a lot of us are right now are being called to spread this kind of message. Yeah, it's
so true too. And sometimes when you get an activation, you can't turn it off. That's what happened with me. It was so profound, this downloading push. I was shaking like a leaf going out on a street corner in LA. Like, what am I doing? Am I crazy? But I just I had to do it, So it was like a push, like just a motivation. I still can't turn it off. Even when I've been bullied and yelled at and like, all of this weird stuff, it's like I can't quit. I just keep throwing the wings on.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
can
It
you
becomes a driving force in your life. Yeah. You can't avoid
Yeah.
it.
So let's go back to the juicy stuff. Can you tell me a little more about the Disclosure Project? Whoever wants to take that?
Sure.
Yeah, go-
So in 2001, Dr. Stephen Greer, he assembled the testimonies of, I think there was several hundred witnesses from former military
almost like
people.
500. Yeah.
500 plus testimonies, and he'd been gathering this all through the mid to late 90s. And he finally, in 2001, was able to come forward with 21 of the witnesses in person to Washington, D.C., and he had them all testify in front of Congress at the National Press Club. And it was a big event where, that these respected military former veterans and air, I guess people in the, I guess they do pilots and things like that, who are not necessarily Air Force, but
Aviation. Yeah.
other aviation specialists and things who had careers in that. And they talked about their encounters. Yeah, they all have different testimonies and different encounters with UFOs. And some of them were more in depth than others, talking about, the government organizations that were associated with them. Some of them just had some fascinating technologies that they saw and different phenomena that they experienced. And so they shared that. It was in May of 2001, and it was supposed to be broadcasted everywhere. And for some reason, the main corporate medias, they kind of had something go wrong. I think it was probably on purpose to make sure that it wasn't like fully out there for the whole world to be watching all at once. But that was the intention for Dr. Stephen Greer to bring this forward to the world, because it was so important, and with so many people, speaking these truths, testifying before Congress. I mean, it was pretty significant. So it didn't get as much attention as it should have. And then, 9/11 happened a few months later. So it was kind of off the radar after that. But Dr. Greer has gone on to produce many documentaries with these individuals and further pursuing his path of, exposing the truth of what's going on with extraterrestrials and interactions with our planet. So it was a pretty amazing event. It was the first time in history, really, all that many people had gotten together, that many testimonies were gathered and presented publicly.
Cool. Somebody commented, tell them about Alpha Centauri.
Alpha Centauri. Well, I mean, that's just one of many places that there's definitely intelligent life there, and many insiders and channelers or people that have had contactees basically have spoken about that.
So it's a place?
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe that's the closest constellation to us. So
I think it's a planet on the closest star to us, right?
The closest star. Yeah, exactly. So I think
And
there's a lot of ties to that with our world and our solar system.
And there's living beings on Alpha Centauri?
Yeah, either currently or in the past. And people have to remember that, again, we're talking about other dimensional planes as well. So after all the research I've done over 20 some years, I'm even finding even more out now recently. And again, everything starts to corroborate and come together. The puzzle pieces are starting to fit. But I've actually recently found out that our density is almost the densest. Our world, the Earth, is almost the densest of any place in the universe, as far as the physicality of it. And so it's really why the veil is so thick here. We can't see past it. We can't see beyond to all these other perspectives and realities and dimensions that all these other beings exist in. So we have a lot of work to do from the ground up, from where we're at right now. So,
well, and it seems like the powers that be really work to keep us dense. They keep us in fear. They keep us addicted to these lower things like gas and oil, and like low vibe foods, junk food, soda. Like,
Oh yeah.
There's a big effort worldwide, and then you see it in all countries, not just U.S., but certainly there are technologies for health improvements that are beyond what we can currently fathom that do exist, that have been created either from ET technology or or back engineered from things that the military has recovered, and these contractors that work for the military industrial complex, that really they don't play by any rules. They don't follow any government. They make their own decisions on what they do, and there's a lot out there that we're not aware of that is being suppressed from us intentionally, because they want to maintain control of the people. If we become too powerful, then they can't control us. There's a lot of motivations there, but yeah, it's sad, really.
Are either one of you typing?
No.
I hear that too. I'm not sure. There's no typing around me.
So bizarre. I've never in my history of my shows heard these weird noises. That's why I'm like, what kind of alien beings are spying on us right now and taking notes? They're like writing. I don't know what they're doing, but it's like kind of creeping me out.
It's weird because it's not necessarily when any one of us is talking. It seems just to be random. Yeah.
Yes.
I hear it more when you guys are talking, and it's almost a staticky thing on my side. I don't know what that is. You're right. It's weird.
Okay, so we're all hearing it. I'm not the only one, though. Okay, cool. Just checking in.
Yeah, don't be surprised. This happens, I think, and a lot of people that especially go live, but they don't know what we're going to talk about, and so sometimes you get some interference.
So I'm going to share a screen really quick, and I'm going to show everybody your link tree.
Oh, great.
So it's Linktree/Shred the Veil. This is where you can find their show, and all their links to their actual podcast is, how do you pronounce that? Infinite?
Yeah, the website's infinite.tv. So it's a whole platform, and it's a monthly show that we produce.
You can follow them on Instagram, subscribe to their YouTube channel, and then they have a Facebook page at Veil Shredder. So
and it's all there.
Sign up for free, Infinite TV, and sign up for
free subscription. You log in and you can watch any show you want on all the various topics. Yep.
I actually wanted to read this paragraph here because I really liked it. Can y'all see it?
Yeah.
It is healthy to have a questioning attitude. It is healthy to look within for your authentic perspective. Don't let anyone else think for you. Be the creator of your reality. Manifest what you want in your life. Release self-limitations and those imposed on you by others. I love that. Take your power back. Seek the truth. Wake up to the true nature of reality. Look past the programming. Open your eyes. Shred the veil. I love that. I was going to write it all down, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to read it straight off the page.
That works.
Yeah, and we're still very getting our social media platforms together right now. I was trying to tell you that too. I was like, sorry, we're a little behind on that, but
got to start somewhere.
We got to start somewhere. So we're still.
I love the quote, "Rise by lifting others." So that's something I love to do. Is plus it gets you guys, working on stuff like your intro and podcast stuff and. Yeah. Worrying about your background and introduce you to StreamYard. Maybe it's something you can mess with, but you already got your Infinite TV, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Let's see other questions. What do you think kind of ongoing hidden agendas might you want to elaborate about besides the dependence on oil and gas?
Yeah. Okay, well, I can equate it back to, it goes into every industry. We call it the military industrial complex, and that came from Eisenhower. And we think that's kind of a crucial pivotal point in history. Just after World War II in the 50s, and this is when our grandfather started getting involved in knowing of these projects. But that point in history where things turned, but it's not just the military industrial complex, it's the pharmaceutical industry, it's the financial industry, there's all of these hidden agendas within each one. And, you can look at it like a giant octopus, or there's a spider web in from the center, there's all these spokes and all these paths that connect the dots. But I would like to always tell people that you can look and try to reveal as much as you want, but you don't have to believe it all. You can just take in and digest what you want, or what really resonates with you, what you think is useful to you to know. But it's a lot of dark stuff. And I do want to preface that and say that if it's not for everybody, some people can know that exists, but kind of go in the other direction and see the good in people and mankind. But I think at the end of the day, you do have to look at these agendas at some point. If you don't come to terms with that, it's kind of like going through a dark night of the soul, your own personal journey. But we have to do that as a collective consciousness. So really looking at some of these hidden agendas, and maybe Dan, you can elaborate on some, especially with the Nazis, the technology there and where it came from. But I do really think that it's so important for people to just realize they can take in what they want, what suits them, what resonates with them, and use it to step off and find your own path and find what resonates with you. What's your own truth? Everybody has their own truth. It doesn't have to be one and the same, but as long as we identify what's wrong and what needs to be corrected and sort of look in the same direction, I think we're gonna be all right. Sorry, I went on a tangent there, but I thought that was important.
I love tangents.
Yeah.
Did you want to elaborate on the Nazi and the thing?
Sure. Yeah. There is some pretty dark stuff. It's a history that it's kind of hard to swallow when you hear about it for the first time. So before our grandfather passed, he was able to write a book. This was a couple of years after the Disclosure Project. Life of the Cosmos Clearance. Derek has it there.
Oh, cool.
And he covered a lot of material in there that he had learned, his personal experiences, a lot of the stuff that he was exposed to throughout his career, mostly dealing with extraterrestrials. And it was an interesting history that where a lot of what we're seeing, where this movement really started in as early as the 1930s in Germany. When the Nazi Party was getting formed, there was a lot of secret societies that were in the area at the time, and they were collaborations of people from the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, a lot of different organizations that were coming together and looking at the darker side of some of the mystery school practices and kind of like the black magic kind of stuff. They were
black magic,
yeah. So they didn't have the best motives, I would say, and there's a lot of history with those organizations and secret societies for centuries before this. But it culminated in Germany in the as early as it started. This one society called the Thule Society that was formed in the 1920s, and they were doing a lot of esoteric practices and things like that. And at one point, they became very influential in the German government, and a lot of the higher ups in the German government, particularly Hitler, were interested in the esoteric sciences and the spiritual, I guess, the dark side of the spiritual aspects of what they were doing. And so they had these two channelers that these mediums, and they were able to contact extraterrestrials from the Aldebaran system. It's a solar system. I'm not sure how far away it is, but and they were decoding stuff in ancient Sumerian language that they were receiving these messages. And so they were able to do that because they had individuals from the Knights Templar who were, they had passed down the learnings and teachings of how to translate the Sumerian language. And so they got like actual designs and drawings and blueprints about this free energy technology, really. And their initial goal was to use the information that they channeled to come up with a time machine. And as they continued to develop it over the 1930s, it turned into this anti-gravitational electromagnetic propulsion systems that are used in UFOs. So the first craft that was actually man-made, because there are man-made UFOs and they've been around for a long time, was actually back in the 1930s, and they had these things around before World War II, and so they were just perfecting that technology as the war was going on and progressing, and there's a lot of false narratives out there, and it was kind of a facade, I will say, that the United States won the war, the Allies won the war, because really the people who were pulling the strings were funding both sides, and a lot of stuff was intentionally done back and forth with the knowledge of the people who were in charge on both sides. And what happened is the Germans, as that narrative was playing out, the Germans actually migrated the Nazi bases onto Antarctica, and they built up a lot of their UFO technology down there, and that's where they had a lot of their top secret bases and things like that over the years, where they've been able to further develop this technology. And there's a lot of stories about things happening in Antarctica, encounters with the United States, trying to interfere and quickly seeing the kind of technology that these guys had, and it was just mind blowing. But
I'll tell you that too. I'll tell you that about basically that was the breakaway civilizations that were coming about, that the Nazis were creating. And remember, and actually Brad Olson's going to be a guest, and he actually went to Antarctica, so we'll actually interview him and see. He's actually got some interesting things, some things that he's found there and discovered, and done his own research and homework as well. But as far as what the technology was, like I said from the beginning, it's based off of free energy. So with that extent of what the Germans were able to do and accomplish so far back in our history, that was pretty much the turning point where the timeline kind of split from what could have been a great future for us and the rest of the world, what they wanted to keep hidden. So the Germans didn't care that they lost the war. In a way, they really didn't. They just secretly, covertly went under the radar and was able to now advance that technology even more on their own, away from the rest of the world. And the players and the powers that were, because I think they're going to be gone fairly soon, but they basically were wanting to just keep us in the dark, like we were talking about, and keep us on the petrodollar and just dumb down as much as possible, so that we really get terrible educations. That it's social engineering, where they're really manipulating us. And they were the best at mind control and brainwashing since the World War II and the Nazis, and then developed into Russia. And we've had all sorts of MK Ultra and PSYOP programs. And my grandfather knew all about that because he probably was involved somewhat to some extent. So anyway, that's how it goes so deep, but that's how it really veered and split off from such advanced technology being hidden and swept under the rug from our eyes, but taken either to Antarctica or off planet to not only the moon, but Mars and even beyond.
Yeah. And one of the more disturbing things about the timeline for me is, after the war, the U.S. government recruited a bunch of Nazi scientists to come over to the United States in a project called Project Paperclip, and they wanted them to work on their rocket technologies and basically work in NASA for space program development type stuff. But when they came over, they essentially infiltrated, all of the systems within our country, the financial system, the pharmaceutical system, the education, in all facets. That they were scattered throughout, and over the generations, their motives and their what their goals were have been perpetuated through, the mass media and all the government, really. So that's the part that's very frustrating. And it's all hidden. It's all hidden. There's a lot of.
So I guess it's just all about people who are keeping us suppressed and hidden. It's really just because they're enjoying their control and their dominance over everybody else, and the wealth that goes with that, like the whole power and money thing over their head.
Yep. Yeah. The Babylonian money matrix or magic, Babylonian magic, whatever they that system that we still have been been under our influence and control all this time because of money. I mean, money doesn't exist in higher advanced civilizations. You don't need it. There's no point. Money is just, it's almost like enslaving the whole population.
It is.
Yeah.
I noticed this a long time ago. I felt like in the past, people were, enslaved at a really grand level. And, of course, the Black population, there's slavery. But then it's like once they really got with the Federal Reserve, I mean, they have enslaved everybody to the money system. Everybody is a slave.
Yeah.
And so that's what's crazy. You got people at the top that like puppeteering everything.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard some weird stuff like Biden died 3 years ago and the Queen died a long time ago, and they're just now saying it. Is this true? Or is it like, does anybody know what's going on?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I had a discussion even with Alex Collier at the Mount Shasta conference. And Alex Collier is such a inspiration and a hero to many people because he's one of the first to come out with this. And an interesting story is our grandfather has notes that he took from Alex Collier's talks in the early 90s when he first came out. And now I finally got to meet him at the conference, and it was such an honor to meet him. But we were having a discussion about this, and he's like, don't you notice how Biden's, he has different color eyes one day, or his ears are completely different, kind of the way they are shaped or whatever. So I think they do, at this point, cloning technology exists, and they've proven that with animals way long ago, but they're never going to say they can do that, to the extent they can now. But, oh yeah, I would not put it past them as far as the technology involved. Yeah.
I've also heard that they have some sort of very powerful technology where they can pinpoint an individual and control their brain and like make a shooter go into an elementary school and kill a bunch of people to serve their agenda.
They call that voice to God technology. Yeah. And that's
I heard about that. It's terrifying.
It's terrible. Yeah. And again, that came from World War II and those deep black projects and using that to the worst, for the worst purposes.
A lot of those mind control programs were initiated in during the Holocaust when the Nazis were experimenting on the prisoners, and they brought all that stuff over here to the CIA, and it's been used for decades. Yeah.
That's just scary.
It is.
I mean, how do we know they're not going to figure out some way? I mean, maybe that's what they're trying to do with those shots and put probes in us, or I don't know, devices or something where they're trying to have a parasitic control over the host.
Oh yeah. And I don't want to cause you to get your platform shut down. So I'm going to be very careful what we say about that, because that's a huge part of it. I know it's obvious. It's obvious to people that are able to kind of, I don't know what it is, but it's almost like that's where the brainwashing comes into play. And it's been generations of this. Our parents were definitely, part of that. Even my grandfather's age group was the first generation to start to become brainwashed. The 50s ideology of aliens being these little green men that are, out there from Mars that are just going to destroy the planet. Like all this propaganda started back then. So just think about how we've been manipulated for so long and taught such nonsense. So if you're not in the high vibration, that all comes back to that. And your consciousness level, you're not raising like your frequency, and your consciousness is such a big part of the story and of the equation of how we function in this reality, and what can make us, have the best life in the world, and or just be depressed and in fear-based mind control all your life. And you can tell which people now decide to choose one or the other. It's become very obvious.
Now, some of the places that are high vibe in general, I would say, are Hawaii and Mount Shasta and Sedona. These are places I've personally been, and they're all very different, but very beautiful. Like Hawaii just has kind of that chillin' token vibe. Like you just want to waltz around with your tiki drink and your board shorts and lay on a hammock, Mount Shasta had this very light, gentle, beautiful, almost like a love energy to it. It was just this peaceful energy. I guess it's all the forest and and the big trees. But something very interesting was I went to Clear Lake there that they have, and
I wish I wanted to go
Crystal
there.
Lake, Crystal Lake.
Crystal Lake, yeah.
And it was very strange to me that there were no fish. I have never seen such a gigantic body of water, and I put on goggles and I swam all around deep, and I never saw one minnow. And I'm like, I went back to the conference and I'm like, yo, where's the fish? And they're like, well, it's kind of a vortex spot. I don't know what that means for as far as the wildlife.
Very interesting. Maybe there's a portal to inner Earth if you go far enough down.
Yeah, maybe.
So there's like Sedona has a lot of vortices as well. I mean, it's a lot of these places like where you're talking about. They're all in sync with the ley lines around the Earth. There's a energetic grid around the Earth, and you'll find that a lot of the ancient monoliths like Stonehenge and the pyramids, and even throughout history, as secret societies learned about these different ley lines and the energies that were there, they try to harness that with the massive like cathedrals and things that they would build. They were specifically located in certain places just because of that energy to try to harness that. And that's what the ancient cultures really knew about has been lost from us and has been hidden from us. Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things that have been hidden from us for sure. All that ancient knowledge.
Yeah. There's even a pyramid here kind of near San Antonio. It's in between here and Austin, kind of. Like it's pretty cool, and it's on one of those ley line things, and so it's just fascinating that there's these random pyramids all over the world and strange structures that have to do with the celestial connections, and it's just pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah,
we just had a full moon in Pisces last night, so if you've been feeling weird all weekend, that's why. I put up my backdrop as to,
Nice.
That was interesting. We saw last night it was like a blood red moon. I mean, it's rare you see that, but
they called it the harvest moon.
Yeah, the harvest moon.
Yeah.
I think we were so much more tapped into that type of, the nature and the cycles of the moon, and we understood that. I mean, think about the Mayans who knew so much more precisely how the planets revolved around each other, their orbits, everything. They knew every little detail. And you have to really think about that. They must have, probably had help. Maybe their consciousness was high enough that they could tap into those other levels of existence or beings that were interacting with them and helping them consciously. But all those things, it ties right back into the UFO and your consciousness level about either you completely think, no, it couldn't happen. I don't believe in that. Well, seeing is believing, but your beliefs make your reality as well. So if you're not open to it, you're probably not going to have too many experiences that validate and confirm that it could be part of your reality. I mean, again, it comes back to your level of consciousness. And right. I think that when it comes to the planet, we're raising our consciousness with the planet as it's also naturally raising its vibration.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think those ancient cultures definitely had their communities and they had very much more of a high vibration and better understanding of the universe and how it worked. And that's why they probably did have a contact with ETs, because they were at that frequency where they were ready to accept them and communicate with them at their level. And you see the pyramids all around the world, a lot of them, how were they built back then with, the technology that they had? If that was, there's no possible way. So that they had higher technologies back then of somehow levitating massive stones and putting them in a very particular geometric shape. And so there's a lot.
All the mathematics behind the Great Pyramid is amazing. And we just talked about crystal technology and the angles, the 51.843 angle or 52 degrees, which is basically what the Great Pyramid is. But that's all technology that's been lost. But of course, that's like a time capsule in itself. It's saying, look, if everything is destroyed, if the whole planet, if the whole human race blows up or destroys themselves and has to start over, that is a time capsule to say, once you're evolved enough, you'll realize what that is and hopefully how to use it. But your consciousness will start to become aware. Yeah, the pyramids themselves, like all these ancient structures that have been built to last, on this earth and on the surface of the earth, which is so volatile, right? So people have to think about that. That's how fantastic those structures are. Yeah.
It's fascinating, you know, that haven't fallen victim to like nuclear bombs and atomic bombs or whatever. Maybe it has some sort of extraterrestrial protection around it.
So there are, so that's one thing our grandfather talked about. There are benevolent extraterrestrials, and that's a big message from Dr. Stephen Greer, who was the head of the Disclosure Project. And they are kind of overseeing us and looking after us. They have a vested interest in our planet because, according to the history, that they were, the seeders of our planet were multiple different ET races. But he said that I don't remember the decade or time frame when he was in the military, that the U.S. were trying to send nuclear weapons up to the moon, and they were disabled. ET technologies have randomly disabled nuclear warheads around the world. They don't want any nuclear weapons in space, and they've actually warned the governments about that. So there are ETs out there that are benevolent and are looking out for us and don't want us to hurt ourselves. They're interested in our raising our vibration and evolving as a species. I mean, and that's some of their missions as well. With what they do is to help us go through that process.
I actually had somebody message me on Facebook, and I don't know if he's allowed to do this, but he told me he was part of some high-level government organization and that they were aware of me and my mission, and they liked it and approved of it, and they're kind of keeping an eye on me or whatever. And like they're responsible for using different technologies to prevent major problems, like big major, I guess like maybe an atomic bomb. I don't know. He didn't elaborate, but I was just like, interesting. So
that makes sense. And I think you're protected for sure. I think you're on the right mission, and just through all you've been through, I'm sure you've had experiences, and at some levels you must be protected. And
especially when I first went to LA and I really wasn't sure what the heck I was doing, running around in angel wings, going to all these events, and I did feel like I had some divine protection a few times, especially, from weird demon-like people being on the street, like having a nervous breakdown, and I'd literally have to walk past them to get to my location. And I would just be praying, like, keep this demon person away from me. And I had some scary moments. And so, yeah, you just never know. I guess when God's done with me is when my time is up. I don't know when that will be.
Yeah, no, keep up the faith, and always have that in your mind. I think people don't realize the power of prayer, power of intention. All those things really do matter. I
pray every day, frequently. Yeah, I pray for other people. I pray for different things. So I do believe in that, and I'm glad you believe in God and stuff too. And so it's nice to talk about that.
Yeah, there's a divine plan and a divine path for us, for sure. And we can call it different names, but there is a divine creator. But I do want to tie back what Dan was saying, because this is very important, because people are going to be like, well, there's the good ETs and the bad ETs. Why would they allow this bad stuff to happen if they're so good? So I can try to explain it as best I can. I'm not great at it, but the prime directive is one reason. There is a prime directive, which means you can't interfere with another species on a lower level of evolution than you. You can't really interfere in a way that will somehow interfere with their evolutionary path, whether good or bad. It's up to them to decide. It's just like if you had an indigenous culture that never saw a car or a plane before, there's a universal law that basically says you cannot interfere with those lower level beings. They have to figure things out for themselves. They're like children who have to learn not to play with matches, that have to learn how to drive a car, what to do and what not to do. But we have to do that collectively.
That's how I feel about men and dating.
Yeah.
Just made y'all laugh.
No, and that's a whole other topic we can go on.
Right, I know.
Relationships are tough right now, but but yet I think that's important to note, and the fact that we can ask for help. We can definitely do that, but we have to do that as a collective, and there has to be enough of us within humanity that have, that level of consciousness, level of acceptance, forgiveness, all of those things that, being a good human being is. If we have enough of us coming together, like-minded, like hearts, to say we want the help, and we don't want to be manipulated anymore. We want our sovereignty as a human race. That's it. That's what we have to do, and then we will get that help we need, and we won't be manipulated by the powers that be, which are ultimately us. They're ultimately humans doing bad things that have made agreements with some other bad type of civilizations, which are only evolved to a certain extent. They can only go to about 4D, I believe, just one level above us. But beyond that, they can't reach anywhere else because they do not have that divine, that love frequency, which is basically the thing that connects us to source. They cannot get closer to source unless they do go along the righteous path and around. And hopefully that's enlightening or uplifting to hear, but that's the truth. That's kind of the truth as far as all insiders say, and all contactees say that. So
I feel like this is a really fascinating conversation, only because it's like this whole debate about free will, and like the way you're talking about it is showing how there's actually some level or layer of free will regarding whole civilizations and worlds, but there's also us individual level.
Oh yeah.
And like within my own personal life, my struggle of somebody bullying me, telling me you can't wear your wings to this event, that's my free will saying,
Yeah.
don't you know who I am? I crash all these Hollywood events, and I'm generally accepted. So I'm
Right.
sorry if you're uncomfortable with it, but it's part of who I am. It's literally become a part of me. And so it's almost like telling a person, okay, well, you can't act gay because that is humiliating to me, so turn that off for this event. Like, no, my wings are a part of me. I'm not going to just turn it off because you don't like it. Like, or you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like a struggle with free will versus someone telling you what you can and can't do. And it's like, well, why do you have, I want my own sovereignty to be me.
Exactly.
And then like your conversation is fascinating about how the whole collective really is like, people are starting to see something's wrong here, and why are people dying left and right from shots and getting sick, and like I think people are just questioning. And that was part of if you wanted to elaborate your important mission and statements and of your show, shredding the veil and waking people up, right?
Yeah.
Right now, this time in our on our planet is very significant. More people are aware and awake and a higher conscious level today than they have been for thousands of years. And we're going to see a big shift. And as that collective consciousness raises our vibration and goes towards that love, we make it an environment where the negative entities are not able to control us anymore. We're empowered. We have our, being our authentic, true selves with our own free will, making our own decisions. They can't control that when you're from that place of love, because like Derek was saying, it only goes so far, and then the ultimate path is a path of love when you get to these higher consciousnesses. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that we do our part to, we feel like we were very blessed to have been given information from our grandfather and to help to spread that information so that more people can wake up and more people can become aware and not feel like they're trapped, not feel like they're just, in slavery in a system that controls them and they have no choices. So ultimately, our goal is really to empower people and enhance their awareness, and hopefully get to that ultimate time where we are all at a higher frequency and we all are able to, see these other beings and the extraterrestrials and interact with them like they used to in the ancient civilizations.
I want to do a quick check-in because we're hitting the hour mark, but I still feel like I want to talk more. Are you both comfortable with going a little longer?
that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
okay? All right. So I really would love to hear a few recaps of some of your shows. Just tell me your top 3 favorites or something that you feel called to talk about.
I think this latest one was probably going to be one of the best. And that's going to air. We always pre-record our shows, and sometimes it takes a little longer to post them or get them up. But there's one that we just did on crystal technology, and it really ties into what we were just talking about, how the ancients used this technology, and they were much more aware of how valuable it is, what crystals really are, and how they function, and how our basically the fundamental structure of our universe is this fractal geometry that involves what the quartz crystal is made up of, and some of these, mainly quartz, but that crystalline structure, along with water itself, the water molecules, which we are made up mostly of water, and then also that frequency of love. These all kind of tie together. It doesn't sound too scientific when you just say it like that, but trust me, our show explains it very well with our guest that we had, Dan Willis, who was a part of the Disclosure Project, who worked with IBM scientist Dr. Marcel Vogel, and then Elena Danaan, who is a contactee with the Pleiadians, with one in particular, Jen Han, who corroborates and validates everything that Dr. Vogel was doing and what Dan learned from him. Well, he just goes a step beyond. So Elena's relaying this information. So that's such a fascinating interview. I think one of the best we've done. And I know we're going to have more to talk about there. What else? Dan, I guess Magical is one that Dan had some experience with.
Yeah, this couple, they started their own company called Magical, and they really do trauma healing through plant medicine. And we talk about the negative connotation that stuff like ayahuasca and psilocybin have in the mainstream narrative, but these are very sacred plants that have been used for thousands of years for healing traumas and for really helping people to get to their highest potential and raise their vibration. So I had a personal experience with them going on a retreat down in Belize, and it was life-changing for me. And it was really exciting for me to get to share that and to just get some truth around that topic so people can learn from it and maybe be more open-minded to it and grow from it. That was a good one. Another one that I really liked was we interviewed Sean Stone. He was the son of Oliver Stone, and he's done a lot of documentaries. He's had his own shows on different programs as well. But he just put out a docu-series, 6 short films called The Best Kept Secret last year, at the end of last year. So we talked to him after he put that out and just went through what it's all about. But he really goes in depth and exposes the agendas that we were talking about. And he goes through the history of it, the mind control, some of the darker side of things, that, black magic stuff and human trafficking. It's a lot of topics that people don't want to hear about or want to even acknowledge. But it's another great film to just raise people's awareness, so that not they're depressed and focused on the negative stuff, but they're aware of what the reality is, and they can value, how important it really is to stay in a place of love, so you can rise above these things and overcome this polarization that we're trapped in on this planet.
Yeah, and I can say, sometimes you might need therapy from stuff you've gone through to try to come through to a place of more forgiveness, compassion, understanding, and love. And it can be really hard depending on what you've gone through, really hard. And some things can feel unforgivable. And maybe that's just a person's journey or whatever reason. But yeah, it's tough. Life is tough. Being a human is hard, man. Like, your body hurts all the time. And but I told Derek this earlier, but I actually met that magical couple in Austin.
You did? Oh,
I did.
David and Megan, yeah. That's great.
Yeah, just a couple months ago. Like, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, they're great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have their own healing retreats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said. I need to manifest a ayahuasca ceremony. I've never done it, and I would really like to try it in Bufo. but I've heard that one's pretty like ego
What's the other one?
shattering. Bufo with a B. It's a
The frog poison. Yeah.
frog medicine. Yeah,
Okay.
it's supposed to help you drop your ego and have interdimensional travel or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, these aren't just people working at what doing this recreationally. These are trained shamans that they work with that have been doing this in South America for their whole lives, and they know how to facilitate this in the sacred way that it's meant to be, for the healing aspects of it. And it's really a soul changing, uplifting experience. But yeah, it's a lot of facing some traumas. It's a lot of processing things, and there's a lot of steps in the process. It's not just a one-time thing and then you're saved or healed or whatever. You have to process that and integrate that into your life after you go through the experience. But it's certainly just.
I like that. So it's like sacred container, because you never know a person's reaction to some substance.
Yeah.
So
You have to be in the right state of mind, and it's not recreation at all. Like he was saying, it is to heal and really purge all of that trauma that you might be facing and figure out what it is, face the fear, and then try to get over it and past it.
highlight the word purge, because they often do involve puking and things happening. Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of that, you what is the most profound or mind-altering, life-changing experience that you've gone through that put you on a current path that you're on?
Dan, that was kind of what you had talked about before, right? That's experiments that you have.
What was that? The experiments?
No, that experience that you had.
Oh yeah, experience. For me, for plant medicine. Yeah, my plant medicine experiences were certainly probably the most profound ones in my life that really were eye-opening and let me recognize some things that my subconscious was, maybe hiding from me that I didn't know, and releasing a lot of things that I was holding inside, and it's so therapeutic and just eye-opening, and it's just the environment that they create on these retreats is really, really cool. What's that?
Which substance did you try? Which plant medicine?
So we did ayahuasca. We did 3 ceremonies of ayahuasca 3 nights in a row, and you stay up all night and you take the plant medicine from the shamans, and there's a lot of prayer and what they call it, chants and things like that are very inspired and traditional things that they go through, and everyone has their own experience, and it's very personal. And sometimes there's a lot of healing going on. The shamans will come around and help people through things, and you're always taken care of. You never feel like you're not in control or something's wrong. They're there to look out for you and take you through the process. And then a couple of days later, we did an amazing psilocybin session, which was really, it was paired up with breath work and these amazing affirmations for like 2 hours straight of doing this intense breath work on this psilocybin. And it was very profound. And that's part of like the integration part that plant medicine is used more for, once you get through the hard stuff from the ayahuasca, it kind of helps you to reset your mind and to take those lessons and those things and carry the experiences with you moving forward. So it's a program that they've put together that's really, really transformational. It's amazing.
Cool. I've tried LSD a few months ago, and like the coolest part of that was I looked at my hand and I could see through multiple layers of tissue, and I was like, whoa, I probably looked crazy, but I was like, whoa, we're energy.
Yeah, the energetic feelings of it all, the psychedelic, like energetic interactions are just amazing. The things you feel, just not just visually, but just sensing and the just different energies. But yeah, actually, David and Megan from Magical, they are working on. There are healing aspects to, LSD as a plant, as a therapeutic way of working through things, and that's being refined right now. But that certainly has the similar characteristics.
Yeah, and another cool thing, we were plotting our journey or our intentions on a whiteboard. It was kind of like a goal setting experience that I went to.
Yeah.
And when we were supposed to write out our whole plan and draw it, and then erase it slowly while we were, imagining it coming into reality or manifestation. And the craziest thing on LSD is I was like erasing it, and the letters were coming back coming
wow.
back.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, what is going on with my brain right now? And
Yeah.
actually, that incident was where I was plotting to have my next season of my talk show. I was like, I got to figure out when to launch season 6. I got to make it happen. I've been dragging ass. And here we are at 10 of season 6 now. So,
That's awesome.
That's great.
yeah, it was a good powwow. Did you want to share one more show recap, or I have one more question?
I'll just share my experience real quick. It's kind of interesting that it wasn't anything drug related. And I think, you know, if you don't abuse it, then, and you use it with the right intention, then it can definitely be a doorway and help you even raise your consciousness. And Graham Hancock talks a lot about that. And I think he's an amazing researcher on all of hidden history and things like that. But my experience, I'll just briefly say, I had a couple, and there's one about JFK and an Ouija board, and I won't go into details, but there's a whole show on that, and I go deep into JFK and the whole conspiracies behind that and what happened to him. But I might have actually had connection with him at some point, but you'll have to see that show. The one that really stands out to my mind and what's most relevant to me, what happened in my life was I had basically a Kundalini activation. It literally, I didn't really know. I've read about it before, but I didn't practice like trying the techniques that are involved to do that. But it happened after going to one of these disclosure conferences, a UFO conference with my brother. And I was in this just such a high vibration. There's no other way to describe it. It's like going to a concert and you're just like overwhelmed, and you're just like, oh my God, I just saw like my favorite band, and it was the most amazing thing. So you're in that euphoric state already, in a really big high naturally, and there was no drugs involved at all. But I had been at such a high state, high itself, that I was just watching a Woodstock documentary, and I happened to trigger something in me, thinking about 50 years later, when it was 2019 when this happened for me, but 50 years after Woodstock, I'm imagining myself there, all the people, you know, whether they were on drugs or not on drugs, but that fact that they were all there for one purpose. And I mean, really just to unite and to say, look, let's stand together, you know, love, not hate. I mean, love was the ultimate purpose for that, you know, in whatever way they wanted to express it. So I kept that in my mind, and I was like, wow, I just came from this conference. It was so amazing. I can only imagine what it was like at Woodstock. As I was thinking this, I see something about Kundalini, you know, how the breath works and how you can activate it. I didn't know, you know, anything about it to that extent. And then right after I watched that, something triggered within me, and I literally had a Kundalini experience. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences like that. That's a synchronicity, and that's something else coming down and saying, hey, you're in the right direction, or you're on the right path, and, you know, go with that. So it was one of the most intense things that ever happened to me. But
it was just a spur the moment Kundalini activation.
Yes, it was actually triggered by music. I think music is so powerful. So it was a song that came on, and music now triggers me so much. And even, I don't know, you know, when you I can put myself in an experience, even just watching a movie. But music really triggers that, and it can put me in a state where I just feel this higher vibration, and it's so much easier for me to feel connected after having that activation happen to me. So I think it's a raising of frequency of consciousness, if you want to say. But I think more of us are having these experiences and we don't even realize it. But I don't think I'm alone on that. But it was interesting that it was naturally occurring, you know.
Yeah. I remember mine got awakened, and I didn't even know anything about this. When I went from Texas to LA, I was so innocent, naive to everything. And I ended up at some Kundalini breath work, and, you know, it blew apart all my chakras and blockages. And I swear, I don't mean to sound weird, but I felt like I probably was like a teenage boy, like horny. I was like, what is all this energy, and what do I do with it? I was like... It was kind of a crazy time. I just remember feeling like an overwhelming amount of energy I didn't know what to do with. So the cool thing is I harnessed it and just used it in my angel project mission, because I was single at the time. So I just, like, you know, birthed a whole bunch of activities and donation drives, volunteer work, posters. I was out. I used that creative energy, strong force to just create out in the community. So that was cool.
That's great. Yeah.
I think we have one question left. What is the one lesson or advice that you would want to share with others since you've begun your quest for truth?
Go ahead.
I would say, and Derek kind of alluded to this before, but I would say using discernment on in what you believe, and there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of different sources, and just knowing, what we know about the various narratives that have been portrayed over the years and decades that are, essentially indoctrinating us into believing a bunch of lies about our reality. You really have to question everything and don't take anyone's word for it. And it's always good to have corroborating sources that, confirm the information when you're doing research. Certainly just personal discernment and finding out what resonates the most with you and tapping into your intuition and your higher self and asking, does this feel right? Is this really a truth for yourself? That would be my.
Yeah, I love that. Like the ability and the freedom to think for yourself, because you can literally be bombarded with so much stimuli and information, stuff that literally seems the opposite ends of the spectrum, but you have the free will to think for yourself and have your own opinion. You can digest all the incoming data and have your own damn opinion. And it's also important to have the courage to speak it out, as best you can. And when the timing is right, So and that's different for everybody. You just got to honor people's voice when they choose to have it and their opinion. Yeah. So I guess I feel complete. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
That was great.
That was a great show. So I'll give you all the show. You can stick it on your YouTube, and we'll talk about why it didn't work out later. But thank you for your time and sharing all this cool stuff with everybody. I hope people watch it and the whole thing and get all this cool information. So
yeah. And we'd love to have you on our show as well. I think that would be great to
I love that.
The audiences.
Yeah, if we can crank up a cool thing to talk about, absolutely. It'd be an honor to come co-create again.
Great. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. And next week, I will be having a female guest who's a rock star. So tune in next week. And thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.